Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services in Eastland, Texas. Tune in every week as we share important information to help you and your family live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, legacy and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Welcome to Life Planning 101. Man, do we have a special edition this lovely fall morning. I don't know if you're around in Texas on October 11th of 2021, but I think fall finally got here. It's about time. And we have a very special guest this morning. We're excited. I know this is a time of year, if you're 65 years or older, man, you're getting some promo material these days, right? You've got little phone calls coming in your house talking about how you're going to be able to save all this money because of your Medicare supplement plan and go to zero cost plans. And what is that all about? And I know everybody's a little bit confused about it. Well, I think the first question you have to ask is, will you actually live to 80? So I've recently been talking to a gentleman that picked a new care physician, and after 2 lab tests, he told the guy, he says, I think I'm really doing well for my age, but I really want to know, am I actually going to live to 80 years old? And so the physician asked him, well, do you smoke tobacco? Do you drink alcohol? Do you have a beer or wine occasionally? And he said, oh no. And I don't do any drugs either. He said, well, do you eat ribeye steaks or barbecue ribs, anything like that? And he said, no, my previous doctor told me that red meat is really unhealthy. It's not something I should do. He said, well, do you spend a lot of time in the sun? Do you play golf or sailing or hiking or bicycling? He says, no, I don't do any of those things. And he said, well, how about gambling, driving fast cars, traveling, skydiving, anything like that? He said, no, I don't do any of those things. He said, then why do you want to live to age 80? So anyway, I thought it was very appropriate because we all want to live long, healthy lives. And we know in retirement that those are the years when we need a good healthcare plan in place. And we are told all our lives that when we reach that magic age of 65, it's all just taken care of for us. Well, is that really the true statement? And I think Medicare is kind of like hieroglyphics. You really can't understand it unless you have someone that reads hieroglyphics. So that's who we have with us today. We have Miss Shelby Thompson. She works at Kennedy Financial Services. She's an advisor here, but she has become our specialist by her own accord. I tell you what, every time I get on the phone with her, I'm asking questions that she's giving me new information about. And so I finally said, what do you think about joining us on the show? Because I think you're the perfect person to be able to help people walk through these hieroglyphics of Medicare supplements, and Medicare Advantage plans. So thank you, Shelby, for being with us today.
Thanks, Angela. I'm really excited to be here. I have been with the firm for several years, but this is my first radio show. So
yeah, no nerves, right?
No, not at all.
None at all. But I know we're excited to have you, and anybody that any of our clients that have worked with you have just ranted and raved about how helpful you are. So I think you wrote a great piece on this. Number one, which by the way, you go to our website www.kennedy-financial.com. and sign up for our weekly Life Lessons newsletter, and you're going to get to read from the horse's mouth. No pun intended, since she does like her horses. But annual enrollment guidelines. So, all of a sudden people are getting all this influx to do something. And is it something that they have to get done by the end of the month, or what does that actually look like?
Yes, so annual enrollment is coming up very quickly. It starts on the 15th of this month and ends on December 7th. So if you're planning on making any changes to your prescription coverage or an Advantage plan, you do have to get that done by the 7th of December.
Okay, all right. So you're saying prescription plans and Advantage plans. What about Medicare supplements?
So if you currently have a Medicare supplement, you can actually rewrite that at any time during the year. However, if your plan, such as a Plan G, has a deductible, you would likely be better off to do that now and get a January 1st effective date. That way you will not have to incur that annual deductible more than once.
Yep, see, there she goes again, ladies and gentlemen. That's something I didn't know until after, this whole learning session today. So thank you. That's great information. One of the things I think about Advantage plans, that you get a lot of promo calls about Advantage plans. And as an agent, I can tell you, I know that there's some more money to be made with Advantage plans than there is Medicare supplement plans in some cases. But I also wonder why the push for those, these zero cost plans, and then you have someone like us saying, no, not so fast? What is the discrepancy there?
I would say the biggest discrepancy, especially for our clients and listeners who live in a rural environment, is your limitations on what physicians or facilities that you can go to. The Advantage plans are set up more like a PPO, where you will have a network of providers that you will be limited to unless you are willing to incur out-of-network expenses.
Right. So what happens if that changes in the middle of your plan?
Right. So, yes, that is one thing to consider. Network changes do happen. And it's also something to consider if you're making a change during annual enrollment. You want to make sure that you're able to keep the physicians that you like.
Yeah, which I think could be a big risk because it's an ever-changing environment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know with our listeners and our clients in particular, we have a lot of snowbirders. And in Texas, we don't snowbird. We try to get to the snow. Or at least where it's a little cooler. But I know people that maybe live in 2 locations in a year or something like that. Is an Advantage plan even more risky for someone like that or someone that travels?
Yes, it is. Advantage plans can be pretty complex. There are several different types. You have your local PPOs and your regional PPOs. Some of these will have out-of-network providers that you can go to, but there are some that don't. So, for example, if you're going to head on down to Florida for the winter, you may not have a physician that you can see in that area.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, so there's obviously some risks here, and I think we're going to take a deep dive. I know we were talking about a story right before we got on the air today, and we're going to take a deep dive into some of these risks, but also, I think it goes without saying that there's pros and cons to every scenario. So we need to really think about, for everybody's situation in a unique standpoint, what is your unique situation and what is meant for you. And I can't tell you how many times that we'll get a phone call and they say, well, I switched to an Advantage plan, and then a couple years later they need to switch back. And unfortunately, there's been a health event that causes that not to be able to happen. So when we come back on Life Planning 101, you're not going to want to miss today. We're going to be talking about Medicare annual open enrollment, to change or not to change, or what to change, with Shelby Thompson right here at Kennedy Financial Services. Welcome back to Life Planning 101 on this beautiful fall morning. We have a very special guest. I say she's a guest, but really I get the pleasure of working with her every day as our paraplanner and our insurance expert, Miss Shelby Thompson at Kennedy Financial Services. And she is here talking about Medicare annual open enrollment. I know if you're 65 or older, you're getting phone calls, postcards, and I know, marketing companies spend hours and hours and hours and hours researching how to motivate people. And one of those answers is when you're flooded with information, you feel like you have to do something. And so I think it's important to note that you may be getting a lot of somethings, and there may be little to nothing that you actually need to be doing during this annual enrollment season. There might need to be some changes that need to be made. And we're going to walk through how and why to get there. But before we do, we were talking about a story that is all too familiar. People that have been on maybe a Medicare supplement plan and they hear a promo about zero cost plan. So they switch over to a Medicare Advantage plan. They're healthy, everything's going great. They're paying little to nothing throughout the year for their Medicare benefits. And then something happens. So Shelby, I know you have worked with a few people that have been in a similar situation like this, and I think it would behoove our listeners to share that story, and so they can really understand what the biggest risk with these Advantage plans is before you jump into something with no cost.
Yeah, so we have 2 clients that I'm aware of this year alone that have had issues with their Advantage plans. Both of these clients had relatively significant medical events happen this year and needed to be admitted into rehabilitation facilities. During their stay at the rehabilitation facility, their physical therapists are, mostly in control of determining how long they need to stay there and what type of care that they need. But in this instance, the client was on an Advantage plan, and the Advantage plan unfortunately disenrolled them from the facility against their therapist's recommendation.
Now, first of all, I suppose that's legal. Must be.
It must be, yes. It
right?
must be.
Second of all, was there a way to fix it?
In this instance, it was somewhat fixable. The client's case manager at the facility recommended that they disenroll from their Advantage plan, which they were able to do because they had a qualifying event. Being admitted to a rehab facility is a qualifying event to allow you to do that.
Yeah. So was it more cost to them to be able to?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Okay. So because they were going off of that, and then were they able to get on a Medicare supplement plan?
No, they were not able to get a supplement. They had to just go to traditional Medicare, which has no cap on your out-of-pocket expense. Plus, they had to restart their annual deductible.
Wow. I think it's important for people to understand that, PPOs, and if you've worked for a company for several years, you probably had a PPO if you had a healthcare plan. And so you're accustomed to them, and you think it's not that big a deal unless you were unhealthy. And then you might have started to see some of the problems. And I think people just are not aware that these problems really do exist because you have to have this, 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 to have this. And if you need this specialist, by the way, you had to be referred by this specialist to get to that specialist. And if you don't go through those proper steps, you might not be able to get what you need. And so it's a very, very complex system. Goes back to that's hieroglyphics, right? So I can't decipher hieroglyphics. Oh, no, that's just the Medicare Advantage and drug plan, really. Both of them. So I think it's really important that people have, someone in their corner like what you do, Shelby. I just commend you for the way you've been able to work with people to help them as much as you can, because these are very complex issues. The provider themselves couldn't really help them. There was nobody there to be able to help them through these issues. So, what makes you, though, you said something, okay, they were not able to get back on a Medicare supplement plan. Why is that?
So in the state of Texas and most other states, in order to enroll into a Medicare supplement plan, you have to be medically underwritten. There's a list of questions on the form that are automatic approval or deny. And if you've had any significant acute or chronic illnesses, most of those people will be ruled out.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's either you get it when you're healthy or you're stuck with what you got.
Correct.
Okay. So let's switch to Medicare supplements then. Let's talk about this because, okay, so we got this Advantage plan that if you're healthy, if I understand right, you're healthy, basically could be zero out of pocket. Could be. Okay, could be like $15 a month, whatever the Advantage plan is, but depending on the plan levels. But very, very little monthly premium for that. And as long as you're healthy, everything's good. You do have maximum out-of-pocket costs, which I was looking those up. I think, what were they, about $7,500 for in-network and $11,300 for out-of-network. So, that's about $1,000. That's a lot, but it's not, as long as you stayed within the network, stay within the rules, it's not a bad deal. Switch to Medicare supplements, and you don't have this 0 to 15. Now you have your Medicare A, right, your Medicare B, your supplement plan, which ranges what when you're 65 years old?
Usually about $120 a month.
Okay, so $120 a month, and then you have to have a drug plan on top, right? Because your Advantage plan covers both those. Is that right? So
most do.
Okay, the most do. Keywords.
Yeah.
Keywords. So Medicare supplement and drug plan, and your drug plan usually at age 65 is what?
A basic drug plan will cost you about $15 a month.
Okay, so you could either play, if I'm understanding right, something like $2,000, $2,400 a year, and you're basically have what we call the Cadillac of plans. Is there any loopholes in those plans? Is there any way that a provider wouldn't pay or anything like that, like you were talking about with the Advantage plan?
So your Medicare supplement will allow you to see any physician that accepts Medicare.
Okay, so you're covered.
Correct.
Okay, and then you just have your deductible, which is?
This year it was $203.
Okay, so, and then that's it. Everything else would be?
That's right.
Okay, so that sounds like a little bit safer plan, if I had to guess.
a bit safer, a bit less complex.
Yeah, so you're paying more as you go, but you're paying for the factor that you are getting older, you could be unhealthy, and there's less risk down the road.
Yes, you will know what to expect.
Yeah, okay, so those Medicare supplement plans, now let's go to that premium. Do they go up?
They do go up.
Okay, so what causes that? Do you know?
One thing that causes that is because you originally have to be medically underwritten. The company knows that if you're staying on the plan for a long time, that you're probably not in the best of health. So they do continue to increase the premiums as you hit each birthday.
Increase the premiums as you hit each birthday. All right, so are there differences in companies with that?
There are. Each company will have a financial rating. That's something that we look at closely. For our firm, we only consider companies that have an A or A plus financial rating. Those that have lower than that will be more likely to raise their premiums to cover their costs.
Oh, wow. And again, going back to that insurability, so once you're in a supplement, if you're uninsurable, can you switch supplements?
You cannot.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, then not only if you're wanting more of the low risk type plan, then you need to be with a quality carrier that is less likely to raise your premiums going forward in case you end up with a health event.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's making a lot of sense. So you wrote something in your article about switching carriers or looking at different carriers. Now, how often is that typical, or what would you recommend there for most people?
I would recommend taking a look at it every year. You have the opportunity to switch. You probably won't be saving, more than $10 a month if you do it every year, but you are keeping your costs low over time. In 1 year, you likely won't be able to switch, and you'll be happy that you did that.
Okay, as long as you're staying with the quality carriers, of
Correct.
course. Right? So, man, there's all these it depends,
Yes.
right? And we live in a world of it depends. Well, this is highly, highly informative. I think before we jump off into the next cliff and talking a little bit about prescription, and then talking about just, living in retirement in conjunction to these plans and what that really means for you, let's take a quick break. But I want to remind our listeners that Shelby did a wonderful job, wrote a piece for our weekly life lessons, which if you're not subscribed to, please go to www.kennedy-financial.com. And when we come back, more on Medicare annual open enrollment. You're not going to want to miss it right here on Life Planning 101. Welcome back to Life Planning 101 on this beautiful fall morning. We have Shelby Thompson with us, our insurance specialist at Kennedy Financial Services. And boy, is this an awesome show. And I would encourage you, if you're listening to this and if you're not a Medicare recipient or you're not turning 65 years old, I'm sure you know someone that is. Forward this on, because this information, I don't know why it is not talked about more. And I think you've made the complexity very simple for people to understand, Shelby. So great job with that, because the Medicare system is very complicated. You basically can go one of two ways with it, and understanding what those one of two ways really are. And, always thinking if they aren't going to get you coming, they're going to get you going. And that is so true with Medicare. And so, don't take things for face value, and understanding this system is so important. But as I promised when we left for the break, we're going to talk about Part D, which in essence is those hieroglyphics in the code. So, Shelby, your prescription drug coverage, how do people even make sense of this? How do they get help with this?
So the prescription drug coverage, also another very complex piece of the Medicare puzzle. I would suggest for people who are internet savvy to go ahead and get on Medicare.gov. They do have a plan finder tool where you can input your zip code, your preferred pharmacy, and your list of prescriptions that will help narrow down the search. So that's a good place to get your feet wet and see what's available to you.
Okay. All right, great. So now, is that the same thing? I know there was a place you could put on your medication, your actual medications and your location and all that good stuff, and it would help you.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you can put your list of medications, your dosages, how often you like to get those refilled, and it will give you a good estimate of what your out-of-pocket expense will be.
Right. So with your Part D, you mentioned, I think in the beginning, this is the thing you need to do during open enrollment, even if you're on a traditional Medicare plan with the supplement. Is that right?
Yes, you will be limited to make any changes during annual enrollment for your prescription coverage.
So would you advise everybody get on there and make sure that it's still applicable, it's still the best plan, or is that really only pertinent to some people?
Yeah, absolutely. There are new plans introduced every year, some better than others. And also a lot of people have prescription changes during the year.
Okay.
So it's a good idea to check that out and see if you can save a few dollars.
Okay, that's awesome. So I do know when people turn 65, they have to take their Part D if they're taking the traditional Medicare, or else they're permanently penalized.
Yes, permanently penalized unless you're still on your employer's coverage plan.
Yeah, I remember we had a lady, this has been several years ago, but I think her penalty, she had waited so long, she was healthy, so she never thought she needed a drug plan. And I think her penalty ended up being close to $300 a month. And that was permanent.
Yes, that's a big jump from the basic $15 plan.
Yeah, that's right. So even if you're not taking drugs, you need to get on there. You need to have a drug plan, even if it's the most basic, whatever you get. You mentioned, too, that so you got the Medicare.gov website. There's also another nonprofit that can help with this and help with actually all the Medicare, right?
Yes, there is an organization called the Area Agency of Aging, and they help all retirees and Medicare recipients with Medicare questions, even long-term care questions.
Okay, well, that's really cool. And do they actually sell the Medicare supplements and the Advantage plans, or do they just give you solid information?
They give information and can assist you in getting on these plans, but they are not advocates for any particular plan.
Which is probably a good thing if you want a non-biased.
Yes.
Right. And I know, we come from rural America, right? So we have maybe a different outlook. In fact, we've got two major cities, I'd say, Abilene and Fort Worth around us, and we've watched through the years. We're always saying it's not our experiences, but the experiences we lived through our clients. And we've watched plan providers change, specifically in Abilene. And it was a nightmare for people that were on Advantage plans. And so I think it's really important that, people pay close attention. They really understand what they're getting themselves into. And I know you wrote this wonderful article, and I think to sum things up, you gave 3 really big pitfalls that people can fall into. Would you recap those for us and for our listeners? So, I think it's a good summary. And again, make sure you get this out to everybody you know that is on Medicare or will be going on Medicare, because this is big.
Yes, I would say the first, if you're planning on traveling in retirement, or maybe just even the possibility of being a traveler in retirement, you want to be very careful limiting yourself to an Advantage plan, especially with the local PPOs. You're going to have trouble finding care in different states as you are moving along. Also, I would suggest if you move during the year outside of annual enrollment, you're going to want to check and see, as far as the prescription plans and Advantage plans, you will have the opportunity, if you have a permanent move, to make changes, and you'll want to do that. So you can stay in your local or regional PPO, and also for your prescription coverage, so you can stay with a preferred provider.
Okay, well, that's great. This is phenomenal information. I know, like I mentioned, everybody's getting hit up by everybody thinking they have to do something, and maybe the thing they have to do is nothing. But it sounds like no matter what, you need a trusted advisor to help you through this process that's really non-biased and able to help you figure out what's best for your unique situation. Man, do we always go back to that? It's all about helping you live life on purpose at Kennedy Financial Services. And Shelby, thank you so much for your expertise and your time today. This was just truly great. We appreciate you, and make sure you do go onto our website, www.kennedy-financial.com. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter. You'll be able to pull up this podcast, forward it to everybody you know, because this is some solid information. And we truly thank all of our listeners each week. We're going to have some awesome shows lined up. Man, Congress always gives us some good stuff to be able to talk about on Life Planning 101. So the fall is going to be loaded with new legislation and taxes. Man, that sounds like fun first thing in the morning on a Monday morning. But here we are on Life Planning 101. Thanks so much. Have a great week. Have a blessed week. And we hope to have you again next week on Life Planning 101.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services. If you have questions, you can email them to lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more Life Planning 101. Securities offered through Calton and Associates Incorporated, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Smart Money Group LLC. Kennedy Financial Services and Smart Money Group LLC are separate entities and are not owned or controlled by Calton and Associates Incorporated.